So what I want to do really is suggest and recommend that you start being more judgmental, more critical, and more negative in your thinking and how you are looking at things. And I know that's kind of a weird statement, it's kind of a weird thing to say, a bit contrarian, and it's going to make a lot more sense as what I'm saying unfolds in the video. And really the primary reason why I'm suggesting that is because that's actually how your brain works. That's actually how you function. It's actually how we function in the world through a process called learning. And what I mean by that is, let's say you take a test. Maybe you're in school. Maybe you get 97 questions right and you miss 3. Well, you're probably going to forget about all of the ones that you got right, and you're going to remember 3 that you got wrong. Let's say maybe you're an artist or someone who does some kind of creative performance thing, art, music, or some other medium, and you play the song 99% correctly, but then you hit like 3 wrong notes. Odds are those wrong notes are going to stand out. And I could keep going with examples, but really what I'm trying to get at is that this is an underlying faculty of how our brain functions and how we learn. And subsequently, this has been really conditioned out of us and repressed and demonized. And so much so that we are afraid to make mistakes. We are afraid to be anything other than good or perfect or good enough or better than someone else or some other arbitrary, artificial, unreal kind of schema that we willingly put ourselves into. When the actual functioning of our brain is learning through making mistakes, which, makes sense when we're children, but then basically it becomes conditioned out of us because we have to become something other than what we are. So that's kind of the first thing that I really want us to, have on the stove. We're going to put a few different pots on the stove right now, and they're all going to kind of simmer together and come together. And that's the first one, is that's how our brain functions, and this is really the core of largely who we are. Now I have to say these couple of caveats, and the first being that obviously appreciation, gratitude, kindness, acceptance, all these things are good, great, amazing, useful things. And we should learn to cultivate those as well, because we are adults, we're dynamic human beings. We should be able to have both faculties, and we should be able to exercise our critical, judgmental, and negative thought capacities towards things which are actually useful, are actually good investments of our time and energy. So standing in the mirror and looking at ourselves and being judgmental and critical and negative might not be that useful. But let's say looking at various belief systems or various ways in which we're choosing to show up in the world or choosing to approach situations, or the way people are coming at us, or various paradigms and institutions are coming at us, that might be a useful way. And that might help us actually start to get in touch with having our own opinions, having our own thoughts, having things to say about things, noticing things, having insights, rather than just being reactive or only looking at things in terms of very simplistic black and white terminology. So the next piece is really getting in touch with the various stages that we go through in the expression or lack thereof of our own inner truth. And the first is that we just say our truth. This is who I am, this is what I feel, this is what I think, regardless of the consequences. Because there's a lot of misunderstanding where people think that if you choose to be more authentic or honest or speak your truth, that somehow the world's just going to be like, what? That's amazing. Here's the rewards. Here's candy. And everyone's going to be nice to you, and the clouds are going to open. It's going to be amazing. When in actual fact, it's usually the opposite. It's usually no one wants to hear it. Because if you're being true to yourself, or you're anchored in some defined thing, or let's just say maybe you're calm, you're just calm. But other people around you are either not in touch with that in themselves, or they're actively trying to repress it, or they have some issue around it. Odds are it's going to make them upset. So it's not necessarily going to be that great. Hence the thing about regardless of consequences. You have to be able to step into that regardless of the fear and the other bullshit that's probably going to come along with it. And the second stage is basically creating drama or conflict as a means of being able to express your truth. And this is a really common one, easy one to see in relationships and movies and media, with the whole thing about drama, big fighting, big build up, and then eventually there's this catharsis where it's like, you know what, I just feel this, or I just need to say this. So that's a pretty easy one to understand, which we're all pretty familiar with. And the third stage would be disease, creating a lack of ease in the body, getting so sick that we eventually, get to the point to where we can finally say what we need to say. And then the fourth stage, even though I said there was three, it's actually four, is, impending doom or impending death. People on their deathbed, or when people realize they don't have that long to live, all of a sudden you're like, fuck you, screw you, I'm not doing that anymore, I'm not doing that, I'm only going to do this. And that's just what it takes for them to actually get to the point to where they can even speak their truth to any degree. Now, this model is great. It helps us really understand where we're at, because it's going to be fluid and changing all the time. And even if we get good at speaking our truth, we're going to have moments where we're not. We're going to have areas where we're not. And some areas we'll feel really confident in doing, and other areas not so much. And basically, this relates to the first thing that we were talking about as far as being negative or judgmental or critical, or being willing and open to making mistakes and learning from things. Because the biggest piece about really being critical and judgmental and negative is actually being willing to be wrong and being willing to change. And that's kind of the limb you have to be able to go out on, is just getting really comfortable with being wrong, being really comfortable with making mistakes, and really embracing those things, and really starting to get in touch with that actual dynamic. Because it's a living process. It's not a rigid philosophical framework which we can write a dissertation about. It's like a way we're actually living and showing up in the world. But it's been conditioned out of us because we've been basically probably told to be someone other than who we actually are. We've perhaps not been in situations that gave a shit about our inner truth. We've never actually given ourselves the permission to maybe even ask, well, what is my truth, actually? Who am I, actually? And how am I actually going to express this? And it's another misstep that often happens where you just tell people to be honest, tell people to be authentic, just be you. You say all these things, but it's like maybe a person doesn't even know who they are. Like, okay, I'll be me, but what the fuck is that? Or I'll speak my truth, but I don't even know what that is. Man, okay, that's your truth in the moment. You start with that. But it's because we are often so conditioned by all of these external things that we lose touch with even what our truth even is. So it's a process of working through things and generally making mistakes and being open and being willing to change and be fluid within that. And basically this has a huge interplay with patterns of disease that we may or may not be manifesting in the world. And this is something that it's not a mental process, because who you are is not actually a mental process. Because pretty much how it works is life is happening all the time. You are doing things all the time, most of which you're not really aware of. And then occasionally your mind will pick up one thing and be like, oh wait, now I'm paying attention. I'm conscious, I'm aware, I'm awake. Or I'm going to tell myself a story about this one thing, and that's really what my life is, and that's really who I am. It's not really the case. Or people, or I should say our modern paradigm is so mental based, and it's so impoverished, and so ignorant, and immature, and impotent, and childish, and juvenile, that we think that's all there is. It's like, okay, well, I need to speak my truth. We just default to some sort of mental process. Or we say, okay, there's somehow a connection between the disease I'm manifesting and how I'm showing up in the world. So we're going to open a self-help book and say, oh, it's because you're negative thinking. It's because you're doing this. Then you're going to say, oh, okay, well, I'll just think positively now. I'll just only do these things and I'll stare at my vision board and I'm going to be nice and be kind things. But in reality, who we actually are, how we're really showing up is anything but what we're trying to do. So we're exerting all this mental energy and stress and anxiety, really fighting against ourselves. And that just tends to create more psychosis because we can really believe that we are this thing, really believe in it, and really fool ourselves. But what we actually are is not that at all. I mean, yes, every human being contains a full spectrum of experience, yes. But to really limit your experience as a human being, to really limit who you are to such a degree is actually not healthy. It's actually violent. To say that I'm diseased and now I must be, positive thinking, happy, X, Y, and Z, that's actually just more violence on yourself. That's more disease on yourself. Because you're just giving yourself more limitation, more constraint, and not even any time or space or ability or capacity to be in touch with who you actually are or what your truth actually is. Thus, you're not really doing anything. You're not really going anywhere. You're just running on a hamster wheel, running on a circle. And this is largely what the system wants and how the system works, because the people that are in it are operating from that place. So the results they manifest are going to be also from that place, and they're going to lead people to that place, potentially. So it's really rather sad and upsetting to see and watch and observe, but at the same time, we each have the capacity to make a different choice, or maybe look at things a bit differently, or just get in touch with who we actually are, and be willing to go through that process, which is not going to be pretty. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fun all the time. It's not going to be, all of the garbage shit that people are using to market New Age sort of things and spirituality and religion. It's usually further from from those things. But in actuality, it contains many rewards and many treasures and many things which are actually worth it. Because believe it or not, many things in life that are good require work, require effort. And for some reason we believe because we are A, B, or C, we deserve A, B, or C. When in actuality, that's not really how things function a lot of times. You think, oh, I'm going to be a concert pianist. And I just deserve to be a concert pianist because I have the money to take lessons from one of the best teachers. And I have the money to buy the best piano. So I deserve to be a fucking concert pianist. I think that's how it works. It's like, well, I thought positively about all these books, so I deserve to be happy. I must be. I went to the yoga workshop. It's like, well, it takes a bit more than that. Now, with basically that majority of the content of the video out of the way, I've had a few other caveats, which is that, I understand where people are coming from, because being in pain sucks. I mean, I've had my fair share and have it on a basically daily, regular daily basis, which that's what I always love. I'm quite entertained when people attack me, either through whatever medium online, or even just people have said to me, written relationships about articles, or I've written articles about relationships. People are like, oh, it seems like you've not really been in a relationship, or it seems like you're just not you're just sort of writing this in such an intellectual, detached, dry way that it's like you've never actually been into it. You're just coming up with it from a laboratory somewhere. And I'm like, well, if you actually really knew the amount of pain and rolling on the floor in agony that led to that realization, or that led to that insight, then you might not be so fucking stupid and offensive to say such ridiculous things. But that happens all the time. And I've made, I have probably 600 or plus videos on my YouTube channel right now, and largely a lot of the things which are lobbed at me is like, oh, you're arrogant, or you're mean, or you're harsh, or you're cold, or you're whatever, these things. And I'm like, dude, if you really knew the amount of pain that I have been through and feel on a regular basis, then maybe you wouldn't say such stupid things. But I don't know. But that's just more me. But I also just laugh at it because it's kind of funny. But because I'm the arrogant one in the situation, but the other person's being so presumptuous about me and saying things about me, this person they don't even know. They're making a judgment about because they watched 30 seconds of a video, because let's face it, no one actually watches the videos, rarely. They just sort of skip through and be like, oh, I know what he's saying. So it's like, okay, I wrote an article or made a video. You read none of it, and you've arrived at a conclusion about me, my life experience, what I've done, what I've been through, who I am, what I think, how I feel, how I believe, based on that little amount of information. But I'm the arrogant one. Solid case. Solid argument. So I can't even get upset about it. It's like, okay, I can't tell. I think this person's kidding. Like, I can't imagine a person would legitimately really think this. So it's just funny. So and why I'm bringing this up now is because I understand how when we are in pain, all we want is relief. All we want is just to get out of it as quickly as possible. All we want is just someone else to do it for us. Or all we want is a simple solution that is just too good to be true, but maybe it'll work. And I get all of those things. Why do I get them? Because I've done all of them. Because I've tried all of them. Because that was my early 20s. So now, here I am, 32, trying to get across to people, hey, there's another way. It's another way to look at it. It's another option. And I also realized that we all learn from mistakes. So actually, if you keep someone from making the mistakes they need to make, you're actually not helping them. You're doing what is called enabling them. So sometimes, really now, I guess if we're talking about advice, really the advice is make as many mistakes as you can. Just fucking go head on and jump into it, because the faster you crash and burn is the faster you might actually learn, and you might actually figure things out. Which is why I'm saying be negative, be critical, be judgmental, be actually fucking engaged with your experience as a human being, and stop trying to be some carbon copy, monotonous human being, because that's not interesting, and it's not life, it's not being alive. It's just regurgitating paradigms or whining about your personal melodrama, or just actively repressing yourselves, which the majority of the time was most of what I see as, instead of actually getting in touch with what I'm talking about, which is various stages of our truth, see a lot of just active repression in most spiritual communities, because it's what I said earlier as far as who I am is actually this thing. It's like, okay, I'm wearing this hoodie right now, right? Maybe there's some stains on it, because let's face it, there actually probably are from eating food. But I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go buy like a really nice jacket, really pretty jacket. I'm just going to put it over top of this hoodie. And then I'm going to go around telling everyone how I'm like X, Y, and Z and pretending, and everyone's going to judge me based on their superficial level of understanding, because they understand themselves superficially, so they can understand other people superficially. So they're going to be like, wow, that's true. It looks like you've really changed. You're like really a highly evolved spiritual being now. You know, you were Joe Schmo, but now you're like divine star child, moonbeam, cedar chest. It's like, wow, you've really changed. But I can only say that because my level of understanding is so superficial, so immature, so short-sighted, so violent, so oppressive, that that's all I can really see. Because that's all I've actually allowed for myself. That's all I've actually been willing to engage with within my own experience. So basically what I'm coming around full circle to after 20 minutes is the willingness to actually go back and re-engage with these things. And using using the 4 stages of truth is useful to look at as a model, because it also tends to model how infants learn to reach out. So anyways, hope this video has been helpful and giving you some insight and things to think about in terms of inner truth and speaking your truth and making mistakes and healing disease. So if you actually have a comment or something useful or insightful, post it below, and I will talk to you soon.